If you are any flavor of neurodivergent or just a highly intelligent, no BS person who cannot with the hand wavy UX theater, and you ask why all the time because arbitrary is your least favorite thing and your worst enemy, this episode is for you. So Meghan Logan is a lead product designer at Stripe and a public speaker on design and neurodivergence. She is also a student of the OOUX masterclass and has recently found OOUX as this safe haven for her logical mind that just hates ambiguity. So if this sounds like you or anyone that you work with, pull up a chair. You're gonna love this conversation. Now, if you are listening at all in real time, I have got an exciting invitation for you. Do not skip over this part. This is a really important announcement, all right? My once a year epic 2-hour free training, the UX Level Up Live, is coming up, all right? I'm doing 4 sessions, across March 25th and March 26th, 2026. So hopefully I've got a time that works for you. And I've already got over 1,000 people signed up, designers who are fed up with the status quo and who know that this kind of deeper work is the answer to becoming super freaking valuable in the age of AI. Okay, so this is where you get to see OOUX in action. And for those that are new here, that's object-oriented UX. You're gonna get the top 20 most actionable strategies that make up the ORCA process. And you're gonna get all those handed over to you on a silver platter. And these are actionable strategies, like literally use them the next day. So go ahead and grab your spot at OOUX.com/leveluppod. And at the end of the event, I am going to be opening doors to my brand new 6-week live program, OOUX Discovery Live. So this program kicks off on April 6th, 2026, and it is for designers who are ready to go pro as systems designers with just less stress and more joy and more fun. So it's a really flexible training curriculum. It's built to fit into your busy schedule about like 3 to 5 hours a week. We've got live integration sessions every single week. We've got chat support throughout the week. We've got a ton of bonus workshops. AI is going to be threaded through the entire program. And we've got a really exciting AI-focused design challenge that we're going to be working on that's going to bring us into discussion and debate about AI ethics as well as innovating with AI. One of those bonuses is actually a vibe coding workshop that's going to be baked into the program. And we're going to be building alongside of AI with way more intention than vibes. All right. So it is going to be such a party. And this investment is only $555. And we've got a payment plan for you too. So if you are already one of our students, you are invited as well. Even if you're certified, this is going to be great for you to practice, but you're going to be able to get in at just $222. So if you have been circling for a while, if you've been wanting to plug into this community, really get started with OOUX, get your hands dirty, but the full masterclass or the certification just kind of feels like too much of a commitment, I totally get that. So this is why I created Discovery Live. It is the first 5 modules of the masterclass, and it is a path that gets you all those core concepts. It might be all you need, but if you decide to keep going, I've got a really seamless path forward for you. In fact, if the certification is on your radar, then this is the best way to prepare and actually pay less overall, because Discovery Live students are going to get an awesome early bird opportunity to go ahead and enroll in cohort 12 if they decide they want to go that route this fall. So I hope you're already excited about that. So let's start with registering for the UX Level Up at OOUX.com/leveluppod. The link is going to be in the show notes per usual. If you do not want to go to that free training, but you are interested in Discovery Live, just make sure you're on the newsletter or you follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram and you're going to hear about it. All right. So I have more links in the show notes for you to make sure to connect with me there. Okay, let's go talk to Meghan. If you're looking to level up your UX, content, or product design practice to confidently and joyfully tackle complexity, ask the million-dollar questions, and design digital systems that actually work, you are so in the right place. Welcome to the UX Level Up podcast. I'm Sophia Prater, and for over a decade, I've been teaching professionals how to make the most valuable and often invisible parts of UX gloriously visible. We will untangle the structure beneath the surface before jumping into screens, saving time, money, and headaches, and having so much fun doing it. Together, let's UX collaboration, break down silos, and build shared understanding that sets everyone up for success. Let's become the systems thinkers that our teams and, quite honestly, the world are so desperately craving. Let's level up our practice and redefine what it means to be a UX designer. Let's jump into it. Meghan Logan, welcome to the UX Level Up podcast.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. So Meghan Logan, for those that do not know her, she is a lead product designer at Stripe, whose obsession lies at the intersection of systems thinking, systems architecture, product strategy, and neurodiverse thinking, which we'll be talking a lot about today. You also speak at conferences about this convergence. I watched one of your talks this morning. So good. So we'll put some links to your talks in the show notes so people can go check those out. But Meghan, you are a student within the OUX Masterclass, and you reached out on LinkedIn recently to let me know, quote, OUX is a very safe space for your ADHD/autistic brain. So I definitely want to go down that rabbit hole and learn all about that and really break that down. But first, I am very, very curious. Why are you obsessed with the Titanic?
Oh my God. I wish I could tell you. It's so funny you asked me that. Yesterday when I was getting dressed, I put my Titanic shirt on and I told my partner, I was like, I'm going to wear this today. I don't know what it is. It's like something crazy to me about a man building an unsinkable ship that sunk. And if you didn't know, I'm going to butcher this because I didn't study my Titanic notes before I came in here, but there was actually an author that wrote a book a couple years before Titanic sank. And it was called like The Titan or like Titanica or like something super, super similar. And it was literally about an unsinkable boat that hits an iceberg and sinks. And he wrote that like, yes, I'm serious. And this is why I'm like, oops, I'm going to butcher it. Because not only can I not remember the name of the book, but I can't remember the author. But there's so much lore around Titanic and like mythology and like whatever. Like at this point, maybe that's been debunked. I don't know. I heard it a long time ago. Obviously, you should believe everything you hear on the internet. So, yeah. But I would say that's why. It's just weird. And it was clearly written in the stars. If somebody like predicted that from a book they wrote, I don't know. And see, look what you did. You've totally unearthed like this special interest. You should have never done that.
I definitely did not tell you I was going to ask that.
No, there's like but so much lore around it. But you set the teaser
out there. I had to know.
Yeah. All I'll say is like the James Cameron interpretation of Titanic is extremely historically accurate all the way down to background characters and the chef on the boat who did survive because he drank so much alcohol. His blood was he was like warm enough in the water that he was actually able to live. And I think he's one of the people that swam to collapsible boat B. And in the movie, you'll see in the background, there's like a chef who's drinking out of a flask and like throwing furniture overboard. And that is how historically accurate James Cameron got with Titanic.
I love that it was historically accurate and that the chef had his beer jacket on or whiskey jacket, exactly. Which is really a thing.
+1 for alcoholics.
Yeah, I mean, it does that for you. I still remember we used to go drinking at a brewery called Sweetwater. So Sweetwater is a huge brewery now, but this was like 20 years ago. I was in college. It was literally like you were at the brewery and you were outside the brewery. Like there was like dumpsters and like children playing in puddles and old hippies smoking God knows what behind the dumpsters. And so we would go there in the middle of winter and you buy the glass because you weren't allowed to even buy the booze back then with Georgia alcohol laws. And we would just
be like, in Georgia?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Georgia. Yeah, I'm outside of Atlanta. I was in Atlanta. So I went to Georgia Tech and I was in Atlanta for 20 years. And then we just moved out to the mountains. We're like an hour and a half outside of Atlanta right now.
Oh, yeah. I grew up going back and forth to Douglasville and Cartersville. So my family's out there. And I've also been to Stone Mountain. So I don't know if that's the mountain nearby, but
No, we're on the other side. We're like the northwest corner, like almost to Tennessee. But let me know when you're back in town. Let's hang out. Let's hang out in Atlanta.
Yeah. Yes.
Sweetwater.
Yes. Well, go ahead and tell me. So you get the drink, you get the glass.
Yeah, we would just try to, get as many beers in because we'd be so cold and be like, gotta get our beer jacket on. It's a thing.
We did that in San Francisco. They say in San Francisco, you're supposed to always carry a coat. I don't live there anymore, but I did for 10 years. The rule is no matter how warm it is outside, you always carry a jacket. It's like a rookie mistake to not bring a jacket because at night you're almost always going to get cold. And so the nights where me and my friends didn't want to bring jackets anywhere, we would wear our beer coats. So
yeah, right. Way cuter. Okay, so before we get into some OUX fun times, I want to get what you call your supervillain origin story on how you found out you got your ADHD diagnosis. How did that come about?
Wow. So do you want my supervillain arc or do you want my ADHD diagnosis? Because they're two totally different things. They
Mm,
could go hand
I
in
feel like
hand, but
I feel like they kind of intersect, but whatever you feel like is more interesting.
well,
I want to
I
know how
got
you
it.
found out how you got your diagnosis.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
then,
found
yeah.
out my mom passed away in October, which it was very unexpected. But before she passed, I always gave her shit for not taking me to a doctor as a kid because I was so weird. Like, I'll give a couple examples. I chewed on bouncy balls. I cried if my socks didn't line up with my feet. I like collected weird stuff and ate a lot of weird rubbery substances like just and so
Mm.
I would tease her and she'd like, oh, I just thought you were like just like any other kid. And then a story would come out and I'm like, what? I would have maybe at least taken my kid to the doctor and been like, what is like going on up there? Right? Like she's kind of weird. And years later, during COVID, I had inattentive ADHD. And I had always known ADHD as a stereotype that exists, right? Like you have to be crazy and loud and you can't pay attention and there's like the squirrel joke and whatever else.
Yeah.
And I
Walls.
never, yeah. And I never had that experience because I've always been very hyper aware of my faults. And as a designer, there's so much crossover because you already have imposter syndrome in the creative community. And then in neurodivergence, you have what's called masking, which is when you quite literally mask yourself to fit in or exhibit the what people call socially acceptable behaviors around other people or at work, etc. So masking and those types of things had become a very common part of my life, except there were traits about myself that I couldn't mask that people didn't like. And I always felt very rejected by that. Like when I was younger, I was very outspoken and direct and like silly. So I was like class clown and had a lot of friends. And when you get older, those traits are a lot less desirable because people want you to grow up and it's almost like you can't have that same sense of humor or curiosity or even emotional bandwidth at a job. One of the first corporate jobs I ever worked, somebody said to me, business has no emotions. And for a long time, I believed that until a couple years ago, I started asking, like, why? Why does it have to have no emotions? Why do we operate like that? And when COVID hit,
Patriarchy.
yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, even getting an ADHD diagnosis is really built and centered around men, right? Because we're women from a young age, like we're taught to mind our manners. And I don't like it. And I don't agree with it. Like the gender roles, the way that they play out in our society. But that is a big piece of it, right? Where when you're growing up, boys had always had more room to do more and make more mistakes. And I say that as somebody that was a huge tomboy. I skateboarded for most of my life and cried the first time I was told I couldn't have a sleepover with the boy because I didn't understand what was different about us, kind of thing. That even the way we're raised, it's not acceptable to be super outspoken and loud and wild and to fail, right? Like we're supposed to be good, whatever that means. So in COVID, as we're all trapped in our houses, I started realizing like the distractions that kind of presented themselves in my work before were more manageable. And I think they helped my ADHD a little bit, like commuting and going for a walk in the afternoon, talking to coworkers, like, grabbing lunch early. But as I'm stuck in my house, I'm realizing like, why can't I remember anything? And I'm kind of brain foggy and I don't have the distractions. I can't go for walks. I can't do things that naturally break you out of this cycle of whether you're like hyper fixated or you just have like bad brain fog. It got so bad I thought I had brain tumor. And I remember having a one-on-one with my manager at the time who wasn't a designer. He was an interim manager between design manager hires. And I told him that. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I cried, which is super, super socially unacceptable at work. Like, you're not supposed to do that. I have done it many times and I don't really care because I'm a human and I have feelings. But, leaders don't express emotion. And I think it was kind of frowned upon how much I tried to be vulnerable about my process with like, something's going on with me, something's wrong. I couldn't really
Mhm.
repeat back user calls I had. Like,
Yeah.
what was the insight I got? And long story short, a manager came in and I tell the story in the talk I give, but she came in, I had a performance review. It was like, it wasn't the worst rating, but it was like the one right below meets expectations. And then there was like I of course was like super anxious. I was like, oh, am I being fired? And then my manager at the time, who was training or like letting this other new manager shadow, was like, no, it's just stuff we need to work on and like we'll get you there, whatever. And her first official day as my manager was essentially like right when we got back from Christmas break and we got in the call and she fired me. And I was really shocked because there was no PIP or anything. And she was
This was
just not,
2021,
oh
like
yeah,
early
sorry, I
20.
should have said that.
No,
Yeah,
I was just trying to track with COVID. Okay, so we're still deep COVID.
early
Oh,
2021. And
oh
so
gosh.
I was already realizing something was wrong with me, and that's how it felt. Which, by the way, like anybody who's listening, there's nothing wrong with you. But at the time, that's what I felt. I felt like something was wrong with me, and I did feel less than and not enough. She told me that I wasn't cut out to be a designer. I should not design anymore. Basically, I should find a different career, which is crazy because I loved my career. And long story short, she didn't tell anybody she was firing me, and it was this whole process. There's a lot of stuff involved where and then right after she did, my grandma died. And like, it was just like a you can't even make up type of thing where you're like, great. And I ended up just leaving anyway because the head of HR got involved and it was a thing. And they were like, you were supposed to give her a PIP. Why didn't we do that? And then I saw the PIP and I realized like that was where my villain arc really started because I was like, oh, you're weaponizing a lot of my experience that I was vulnerable about. And I shouldn't have maybe shared some things
What's
with
a
the
PIP?
people around me. A performance plan. I forget what this stands for. It's like
Performance indication plan
process.
Yes.
It's basically it's what a PIP means is like we're gonna fire you and like here's how we're gonna do it legally because which you can in California no matter what, but because you're an at will employee. But the PIP is like you're out the door kind of thing. Like we don't want you here. I don't see a PIP as anything that people recover from, to be honest. Just from people I've talked to who have been on PIPs and like experiences from the past, etc. So when that happened, I was just so determined and I nonstop for a year. That whole year was just in and out of doctors. And finally, after breaking up with a couple doctors who really tried to gaslight me and tell me like it's nothing, I found my psychiatrist who was amazing. And we went through an entire process together. And I finally got the diagnosis at the end of 2021 in November. And I'll never forget the first time I took my medication and my brain was completely silent for the very first time in my whole life.
Yeah.
And it was like in that moment, you do this like Jimmy Neutron brain blast, right? Where you realize, holy crap, like it's not normal that I hear 3 songs and 2 dialogues and see different pictures like all the time, all night, all day. And I cried and that was when I was working at Lever at the time. And my colleagues loved me and I built really good relationships with them and I really, really excelled in that role. Like I made a really good impression. And that was when I was like, okay, I can do this. And I can do it even if I have ADHD and I experienced what that looked like without medication versus with treating it. And it really became about understanding myself. And then there's more to that, but that's kind of the gist of how I got the diagnosis and what it felt like. And then how going from this, like, I really sucked at that job that I had Amplitude, right? I really sucked at it, but I had so many great colleagues and so many amazing people I worked with to being like really, really good at my next job where when I retell that story, those coworkers are like, what? I don't even see that in you at all. Like, I think you're fantastic. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm just saying the difference in understanding yourself and being able to manage your symptoms is just like life-changing.
Right. Right. And like to get back to the bias, because it does feel like on the surface, it's like, oh, neurodiversity is a superpower and it's a part of our superpower as a team and just like it's par for the course. But like it just feels like it's been normalized a whole lot at the surface level. But
100%.
you have some statistics that it's actually there is still a lot of bias there. Can you tell us about like those stats that you shared in the talk that I watched?
Yeah, I don't have them in front of me, and I'm sure that they've changed by now, so I don't want to misspeak on them. Like, I'll just like quickly. I'd have to like pull up my presentation, but the numbers are. I think it was one number was like 9 out of 10, or like 90% of employees weren't comfortable sharing any of their diagnoses with their employers. And really, what the statistics are meant to highlight are one, the reality of it, but two, that there is a huge disconnect in the companies that claim that neurodivergence and diversity, we'll say diversity, is part of their culture versus the amount of people that actually feel that that's true and that they can embrace that and be honest. I think there's a part in that talk that I give where I have a slide up and it's like this visual that I did in Figma. It has like a fake newspaper and it says something about like company cultures essentially preying upon those types of inclusive terms and saying we're this, we're this, we're this. And I don't think that that's really true. Like just because something's normalized doesn't mean that people understand it I think you could say the same for other big issues like being queer. Just because being queer is normalized doesn't mean people accept or understand it. I think you could say the
Yeah.
same for a lot of other things. And neurodiversity definitely falls into one of those categories because the amount of people who feel they have to mask and struggle at work and how much energy that takes them to just show up and perform at a company where you know it's not safe is really, really sad. And at the end of that talk, what was really surprising to me, and so what I can share with you is when I did the talk, I had, I'll say like 25 to 30 people approach me in private to talk to me about their experience with their neurodivergence and how unsafe they felt about having it and exposing it. And a lot of them were leaders who said similar things around if they felt if their leaders knew that they would not have the position they have or they would be looked down upon because
Wow.
it's just not the box that leaders fit into. And when I tried to do more workshops around the grit framework, even though I had over 200 maybe DMs and LinkedIn about it, only 3 people wanted to come to the workshop where they had to show their name and face. And I think I realized pretty quickly people don't want to publicly share these things, but they want the resources to work through them and to feel seen in our industry because that safety is just not there no matter how much a company says it's part of their culture. And I could tell you a million reasons why, but like for that, I'll just like leave it there.
So I actually do remember the statistics because I watched your talk this morning. So this was January 2025. And I think it was like, it might be like a digit or two off, but it was like when a public poll of folks within organizations, it was like 3% identified as some flavor of neurodivergent. But then when that poll was done privately and anonymously, it was like 53% identified.
Yeah, there you go. See, you're remembering
like over
my
half.
talk better than I can.
Well, it was a while ago. I just watched it this morning, so I got an edge. But I do want to highlight something. I don't know if this will I just want to loop it back to leaders not being able to show emotions, and I think that is true in many organizations. But what I would love to see, because what I do think it's important as a leader, and I am having to learn this is leading my small team, how important emotional regulation is, because the team is going to reflect my regulation, right? So I can still be vulnerable. I can still show my emotions, but how do I do that in a way where I've taken my time to process my emotions, step aside, breathe if needed, and then come back and say, hey, listen, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's the kind of day that I'm having right now. If I feel a little bit off, if I seem a little bit off, like that's what's going on, but I am still emotionally regulated. And I would love that to become the new normal, because I feel like it's almost like it's the opposite, where it's like you can't show emotion unless it's anger, which is, again, like to come back to, the patriarchy and
Yes.
businesses being led by men. It's like that is really the one emotion that is socially acceptable. And there's a lot more now. We've done a lot of work, I think, in the last 10 years, but historically, for even thousands of years, like that was the one emotion that was acceptable for men to show was anger. So it's like we show anger, and leaders are allowed to show anger, right? But
yes,
nothing else.
I think anger represents, which I don't believe, by the way. Also, I'm speaking like more generally to what I think the majority feels. Anger can represent strength. And what's frustrating is there's even a divide there in gender where any femme presenting person that might be a direct talker or shows a little bit of anger or strength, like, I mean, let's be frank, right? Like most people will land on, oh, she's kind of a bitch. Oh, she's kind of like emotional, right? She's too direct. I've seen where male leaders have a lot of space to be angry and to be loud and to be direct. And when women leaders do very similar things, or femme presenting non-binary, like just to be inclusive here of genders, like they're not met with that same respect of like, wow, that person really is a go-getter. And I think strength and anger are the opposite. I think because I've had my own journey with anger and someone that was raised in a very unfortunate like a household with a dad that was a little bit abusive, and like some things that happen there where you learn to channel all of your emotions into one, and it's a funnel, and that funnel just becomes, oh, you're disappointed, that's too vulnerable, let's funnel to anger. Now you're angry because you felt vulnerable and you didn't want to feel vulnerable, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And so many people today still have that unfortunate funnel in them and on them that I don't think it's even acceptable when you have men or male presenting people that are more in touch with those emotions. Like you see what people say about them online, like, oh, they're gay or they're this or they're that or they're a wimp. And so there's just so much narrative around. It's crazy that all of this obviously has impact on neurodivergence and like and corporate workplaces and how we interact with one another. It's like gender based, it's societal based. I mean, our entire system needs to be like restructured, rerouted, and looked at. I mean, obviously this isn't the conversation we're having today about that system, but like yes, it's something that there's not a lot of space in our industry as well within design of faltering within your leadership. Like you have to have that. And I've
Mm-hmm.
talked about it privately, and the last thing I'll say about that is like I want to go against that current and say like I don't think that a good leadership is somebody that can't express emotions. I do not think
Yeah.
that.
Right. And I think that, I mean, hopefully this conversation is a tiny, tiny little drop in the bucket of restructuring that, you know? I mean, these are the conversations that need to be happening. And this is the kind of stuff that needs to be said and I mean, when it comes back to like expressing your emotions and expressing your emotions in a regulated way and processing your own emotions and even letting yourself falter a little bit and knowing that we're all human beings here, but gaining those skills because those are skills that we can learn on how to regulate ourselves, regulate our nervous systems, so that especially as a leader, because everybody else is going to reflect it, everybody else is going to reflect your state. But like when it comes to not even being able to name your emotions, right, what that is it's like its own form of masking, which is like where you're like you can't really get things out, you're keeping everything pent up. And I can imagine, to bring it back to neurodiversity and masking, like I can imagine that takes a shit ton of energy, which you could be
Yes.
like
Yeah.
diverting into being creative and creative problem solving, but you're spending so much energy trying to be something that you're not, or trying to
Yeah.
present something that you're not.
And I think that's so this is actually a perfect circle because that is why I sent the message to you on LinkedIn about OOUX and ORCA because that process is actually something one is what they teach you in therapy and certain like CBT or DBT, but it's a process that I go through in my head that's exactly the same but to every situation in my life. So with objects, relationships, calls to action, attributes, really what you could reframe that as is like what are the things that matter that are happening in this situation? What am I in control of? What can I do about it? And how do I mitigate all of that, all of these things happening and within that? And if I can't, if there's no control over it, right? Like I have to let it go. And that's kind of one reason why I like the ORCA technique because that methodology creates a lot of safety in the design space, at least for when I'm working, because exactly what we were talking about a moment ago with leadership and this box you have to fit into and regulating emotions, that's not a skill that you're trained on before you become a manager or a people leader or a VP or anything else higher up. Like you don't get a personality test or an empathy checker before you're put in those roles. I mean, obviously we see that in our government and our politicians, right? Like some of them are truly, truly a little bit sociopathic. And I think we would be lying if we said some of us haven't personally encountered those types of personalities in our workplace. And that's what's scary is you can have a person that's in charge of you, in charge of your department, that has zero emotional regulation. They're just really good at politics and really good at presenting and masking in their own way, not because they're neurodivergent, but masking this politics side of things where they know how to play the game enough that it can actually
Yeah.
harm the more vulnerable and open and transparent people within the company.
Wow. Yeah. So backing up a little bit because I want to get into OUX and ORCA and like it seems like we have like what you just mentioned is kind of two things, which I love. So there's like how you can even apply the OUX process to your own inner world, right? Which Karen Huell and I have had a podcast episode on that. I will make sure to link that one in the show notes too, because we talk about literally OUXing your mental health and being able to say like, is this a thought or is this a feeling? Like, what is the difference between
Yeah.
thoughts and feelings? What is the difference between facts and feelings? How are they connected? How am I connected to this feeling versus this other person? So actually being able to
I mean,
map
that's
all of that
therapy,
out.
right? You
It's
just described what I
therapy.
do with my therapist every week. So,
Yes, we could
yeah.
totally apply it. And I absolutely love it when the ORCA process can be applied to just about anything, but like doing it for your own. Like I've been playing around with it. I still owe, I think, cohort 10 my full version of this. I started it during cohort 10 and I was going to keep up with it in cohort 11, but I'm definitely going to do it in cohort 12 where I was going through the full ORCA process for shadow work. And actually, Yeah, and shadow
Wow.
work and parts work. So parts work is like it's like the OUX of therapy of like, here's all my parts, here's the shadow side, here's my basement children, you can connect them all. And it's so freaking cool. And I've created like journal prompts around it to sort of like figure out like what is a belief versus a behavior and how do my beliefs impact my behaviors.
Okay.
So it's so freaking cool.
Okay. You're like, I'm like, dude, okay. So this might be a pineapple moment where I'm like, I don't know if you don't have to include this part in the podcast, but I was gonna say I started working on a self project a year ago. I've just coined it noumenal, which is like, I think I should have done my homework before this call, but it's like Latin for basically like shadow. And I want to build or have been thinking about building a tool for individuals to use that helps them understand their shadow self, basically like an app for shadow work. So that's why I'm like, you can pineapple this because it's like we should talk about that like offline. But like,
Yeah.
because what you're saying is I'm like about to froth at the mouth. I'm like, yes, yes.
I've been doing it in Notion, and then I'm like, I've just started
Oh,
vibe coding, and I'm like, I could just vibe code this because I've already built the entire structure in Notion, and then yeah, we
yes.
should totally collaborate. I think we should leave this in. So for those that are
Oh,
listening,
okay.
pineapple is the code word for like spit out. But yeah, okay. So there's like the OUX in your inner world, and then there's actually like OUX using it in your design process when you're designing within your company, and that being a really safe place for you. So like, but I really want to back up for a second. So for anyone who's listening who's just like jumped into the UX Level Up podcast, they like don't know what object-oriented UX is or the ORCA process. And maybe because of the title of the podcast, they're like, I either have folks that are neurodivergent on my team or I myself identify as neurodivergent. How would you explain OUX/ORCA to them?
I would say, um, so I can speak to the ADHD/ADHD lens, and so other people can take what resonates and leave the rest
Mhm.
that doesn't. But I would say it creates a safe space because when I hear work that I go into with design, the first thing my brain thinks is like, who cares? And I think ORCA is a really kind way to ask, who cares, right? Like, because
Hmm.
you have to look at the things, you have to understand how they connect, you have to understand the relationships. To me, that's what I loved about design when I first got started. And it works really well with my brain and other neurodivergent brains for a couple reasons. One, ADHD or ADHD individuals can really struggle with ambiguous and open-ended problems. And so I like that ORCA is a layered technique that creates this productivity framework for your hyper focus, right? Because sometimes you can hyper focus on the wrong things, which happens to all of us,
Mhm.
but you can go one by one and you're still making progress in a really safe, concrete way by using that framework. And it can feel really big and ambiguous when someone's like, just go design, just go do the thing. And you're like, well, okay. So not only do you have to have a lot of self trust in yourself, your process, and the work that you produce, you also have to design comes with vulnerability, period. You're going to be sharing with people. It's very visual. People are going to be picking it apart. If you have to mask yourself in general, and then you have to mask with this like imposter syndrome as a designer, it's going to be such a hard career to get through when you're not confident about what you're doing and how you're reaching a solution. And so I think ORCA creates that safety in the literal nature of our brain that is like, who cares? And why do we care? And why should we care? And I would say it's a great design tool for neurodivergent individuals. And I would even add to that, it's actually a really good tool for neurodivergent users. Because I think traditional UX is actually
Yep.
built on really complex frameworks. And I think that can show in product in a lot of the time, even if they don't mean to,
Yeah.
right? You can have
It's a
actions nested within
reflection.
100%. And so I think that people who get easily overwhelmed by those types of tools, they'll leave. And something I actually was really thinking about before we came into this call together was I was really thinking through OOUX and neurodivergence, obviously, because at least I did a little homework before I came in here, right? I didn't just talk out of my you know what, but designing for different types of people, like truly inclusive design, is designing for how people think. And that's incredibly
Mhm.
hard because everybody thinks very differently. But traditional UX, a lot of the times, you're asked to build something or design something for what people can do, could do, or what we want them to do. And that naturally narrows your lens of the person you're going to design for. Now, ORCA, I feel, removes that unconscious bias you're going to apply when you start thinking that quickly, that fast. Because it's natural to think that. That's what you do as a designer. You're supposed to think about those things. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying you forget that not everybody operates the same. And an example I could give is like Duolingo. I think they're great for a lot of reasons, but I also think they have a lot of dark UX patterns. And I got an alert from them that was like, I don't even remember the exact wording, but it was like, oh, you were so close and now you're going to give up. Like, why are you doing that? I can't even like remember because when I read it, I was like, ew. And then I uninstalled the app, but it's like a shaming technique to get people into the product. I know what that person was trying to do. And I've done it too, right? Like you're trying to encourage people to do something by tapping into their emotional state to say like, we don't want to make you feel bad that you didn't do it, but like maybe you like gamification. Like I get inspired by gamification, but you did it in a way that is very triggering and it can be very negative to people who have heard negging or have had experiences in their life where you're told you're not good enough or you feel internally not good enough. And now this freaking app, I'm trying to learn, French before I go to Paris or whatever, it's telling me like, man, you're a quitter. Like I've told myself that so many times growing up, like I don't need to hear this stupid owl tell me that. Like, and so, but I get what the intention was. And so with that said, I think ORCA can really help you examine the things that need to be done based on how people think in a container. So you don't have to know how everybody in the world thinks, but you have to know how they're thinking in that container. And that creates that safety for the neurodivergent individuals that go into work and say, okay, where do I start and how do I do this? Like, I think the framework, one, ties back to that literal aspect that I mentioned where it is easy to be super literal as somebody on the spectrum or with ADHD. And the design industry doesn't love that. Like I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but like we can go in there if you want, where like people demand creativity, boldness, big ideas, but they never tell you when, like, you'll know when it's wrong. You always know when it's wrong, and you never really know when it's right until it's right.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds
the
silly,
hand wavy aspect of it.
Yeah. And so
where
if you're like, a literal person,
we're going to do some design work. Let's move some sticky notes around. And, know, like that's like that level of ambiguity of like, when I hear people say things like, oh, to get to a senior level designer, it's just experience. It's like intuitive and you just have to like do it a bunch. It's like, no, like what? Like, that's not how surgeons learn. I mean, yes, there's an experience aspect of it, but like there are processes that we can go through. There's like a science and a craft to this. And the kind of like, I can imagine from, somebody who thinks, that likes clarity, right? That likes things to be very, very clear. That a lot of ambiguity in the design process is going to feel really overwhelming.
That is my beef with the design industry, the design process, all of the above, is that there's no clear framework on craft and quality. And so everybody gets to define it on their own. Companies get to define it on their own. Managers at companies get to define it on their own, different from the other manager on the other team. I think it's amazing that we want to preserve creative freedom and expression within our work, but like, let's be so honest, there is no creative expression and freedom in our work. Like, we work for corporations, we work for companies. Like, yes, we have some creative freedom to explore ideas, but it reminds me of like an LLM, like an AI chatbot or like an AI tool can only produce what it already knows within whatever it's taught, right? Like, I can't go to a company and just design whatever I want. You can't. So that it's not true creative expression anyway. So the reasoning for not having like a true framework or some type of standardized method of true talent and like quality work is it allows people to weaponize that part of the industry and to discriminate. And I know they do. Everybody knows they do for whatever reason they want. It's so easy to reject a candidate and say like, your craft wasn't there. What do you mean? Like, can you break that? Like, can you define what craft means? Can you tell me? And I've actually had that experience. And I'm so systems oriented, which is another reason why I love OOUX, that they were like, well, we expected to see like more visual quality in your presentation. And I was like, do you want to hear my process and my systems thinking and my logic applied to the work that I'm done? And yes, the visual outcomes of the work. Or are you looking for a gotcha, right? If you want to see that in a presentation, tell the designer that you're interviewing what you want to see. And don't just be like, your craft wasn't there, because now you make me feel, and you probably make others feel, right? Like, you're not good enough. You didn't do it. You were wrong, or you're not bold or creative enough to be a designer here. It's just so silly, because every person that's a designer, they're so special in their own ways. And I've mentored a lot of designers, and the way that every person as a designer, excuse me, every way a designer functions is so unique because you want those different strengths to your team. It's not all about visual quality. Like, how can you hire people based on visuals and then want them to produce outcomes that move your metrics and your increase, your ROI? That's just like you can have both, but let's be
wild.
honest. Yeah.
It's wild that still happens during interviews. It's just crazy.
I know.
Like, I was interviewing and I'm like, looking for craft. I'm like, can you spot a junction object from a mile away? Did you know how junction objects and tree systems work together? Let me see your base objects and its extensions. That is going to be how I'm going to determine how your craft and your
I think maybe there was an interviewer who thought I was dumb. I don't know. I won't put words in their mouth because they kept giving me feedback on my craft. And in a call, I was like, can you define what craft means to you? Because I'm showing you what I believe is craft. You're telling me it's not. What is it? And so their definition was different from mine. And I think it's okay to admit that, because to me, craft is really about execution and the quality of the work. And that includes the solution you deliver and the way you delivered it. It's not just what it looked like, because let's be real, we use design systems, and I didn't just go into Figma and play around and draw something beautiful and put it on Dribble. So, but to kind of go back to, the neurodivergent question you asked about why I think it works, the other reason it's related to that, it's like these big, bold ideas, this expected but uncommunicated quality for designers to produce novel design means big, bold ideas, new creative solutions that are just like the Steve Jobs of today in UX. But the cruel irony there is that literal thinkers often see the solution faster, and we know how to build it and we know it works. And that's what I think the strength of systems thinking is, which, by the way, I saw some discourse on LinkedIn, like people debating that systems thinking is like not real, and I chimed in and was like, that's really, I know that could be
on that.
Yeah, that could be like a different podcast episode, but it's like, it's not because we don't romanticize the problem. We do, but we just see the objects, right? We're literal. We see the objects and we understand the relationships and we understand why those things matter and how to get there. But then you get faulted for not having the blue sky thinking, which can be paralyzing to someone.
The thing is, though, like constraints breed creativity. So we just added there's a whole bonus module in the OUX masterclass on using OUX for innovation. Like, you can definitely use this for innovation, but you need to understand your constraints. You need to understand what you're working with. Like, design a chair is not going to make you creative. I learned this in industrial design school. Design a chair. Okay, am I going to design a chair? But like, it's like, it has to be under $20. It has to be flat packed, and it has to use only this one material, and it can have no joinery, like, or, no screws or something. Like, that is going to be, I'm going to be creative, right? Because I'm going to have these constraints. And this idea of this blue sky creativity, just like, get on the whiteboard and a beautiful mind and just move the arrows around. Like, that comes back to the hand waviness. And then it just ends up getting shot down because it's like, well, that's not technically feasible, and that's not going to actually work within the business. So like, understand the business constraints, understand the technical constraints, understanding what the users actually want. And then you're like, ooh, now I can really play here. Now I can play with these moving pieces. That's what actually makes us creative.
I think, and I literally wrote that down. It's so funny in my notes. I wrote that I think OOUX actually validates the structure of the creative act, right? Because you're able to structure how you approach the problem and the solution and getting people involved with you and applying the creativity to it instead of this like blue sky do anything, which, by the way, is, I'll say, like, if you have a bad leader, because there's so many good leaders out there, there's unfortunately so many bad leaders, they'll tell you to go do a blue sky. And let's say, like, it can be paralyzing for somebody that has race car thoughts, right? Or somebody that overthinks. And there's traits to neurodivergence that are weaponized, I think, pretty frequently, or easy to weaponize as a manager or a leader, or even another colleague or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. But the point is, when you want like this level of clarity and fairness, and you exist in a space that expects creativity and blue sky, you can come back with tons of iterations or examples or whatever your brain did, right? Because your brain, everyone's capable of being like, okay, I'm going to take this prompt and apply with, my thoughts to it and structure to it based on what you've given me. And you can even hear my literal thinking right now, right? I'm like, okay, I'm taking an input and giving you an output. But it's so easy to be faulted when you're wrong that they're like, well, you went too wide, or why did you do that and not this instead? It's like, it's almost like a trap that is very harmful to everybody. But when you have ADHD or ADHD, you most likely also have rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD. So it's like the fear of being wrong, disappointing people, to the point where I could go back to earlier in the call when I said I have always been hyper aware of my traits and behaviors and things that people don't like about me. And the same with RSD, right? Like often those types of people over apologize, they over explain because you're so used to being misunderstood. And I've
Yeah.
cried about this before with my partner, with past bosses, whatever. You're so used to being misunderstood and having intention assigned to you that it's like it really impacts your ability to perceive a valid piece of feedback versus criticism. And I have actually
Mhm.
asked managers in the past who didn't do it, by the way, but can you provide feedback to me in a non biased way? And here's how you do it. And even given them a framework for it, which is you could just Google like non biased feedback frameworks. And one of the ways that you can tell the difference between performance feedback and personality feedback is if they can give you examples of the behaviors and actions you displayed in your work and what the outcome of those were. So, again, you can even ORCA performance reviews, but just to say, like, hey, I feel like you're super defensive. Okay, can you
Mhm.
give me an example of how I was defensive? No, it's just the way that you said da da da. Okay, that's personality feedback. It's like
Yeah.
I'm a literal talker. I've explained my neurodivergence, and yet I'm a difficult employee because I sound direct or
Mhm.
aggressive to you. When in reality, I'm not. And there's no impact to the work, right? Like the
Yeah.
process wasn't messed up, the outcome wasn't messed up, but my traits, and I'm sure other people can relate to this, like their traits become noise at your job because you're constantly perceived for your facial expressions, your hands, your everything. That I think things like Orca are so important in our industry because they give people who can get confused easily on what's true or not about themselves something to lean on and something to represent. I think the way I wrote it as I was thinking about it was like it yeah, it's a defensible language for how your brain already works. My brain already works like this. So as soon as I saw Orca, I was like, oh, other people don't think like this. And not to say that that means it's easy or simple. It's not. I think I'm just a freak who really likes to look at everything and examine it. And I think there's a space for those types of designers in our world. And it's sad that it's so looked down upon to be
Right.
emotional, to have a voice, to you're not this, you're not that, that like people hide the best parts of themselves because of that fear.
Have you found that using OUX has helped you communicate or helped you like work with others? Have you
Absolutely.
have you brought have you brought anybody else into it into the process, or is it just like how you present your work, how you ask questions?
So OUX is like before it's funny. At my last job, somebody was the way I talked about my process, this designer I worked with was like, have you ever heard of OUX? And I was like, no. And she was like, I think you would
Ask
really
you how
like
you
it.
found out about it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool,
She was
cool.
like, I think you would like it. You're already kind of, you talk like that. You kind of like, that's really what your process is. And so when I paid for the course and started taking it and looking at it, I was like, yes, this is actually, it was almost like taking how I already thought, but providing a way better structure to it. And
Yeah.
so the hardest part as a designer, I think, as you get more senior, is you become more responsible for more ambiguous workflows.
Yep.
And you have to know who to bring in, when to bring them in, etc. And you're also going to deal with a lot of opinions. You're going to deal with politics. You're going to deal with feedback you don't always agree with, but you need to know how to talk your way through that. So having this type of format, which I actually did, I've done an exercise with another designer at Stripe with OOUX. It was super mini. I was like, can we just look at the objects because where we were getting so lost in a potential navigation structure like that, we had to stop. I stopped. I was like, let's just look at the objects. And I was like, and what are their relationships? And so like that to me is like one quick way to parse out noise when I'm like, wait, this is getting loud. But the other part about bringing people in and managing opinions is that you can say like facts versus fiction, and you can do it in a way that's way more diplomatic than saying, well, I don't know if I agree with you because of this, right? Like, which can feel dismiss. You never know who you're working with either. Like,
Mhm.
everybody has a personality at work. And that's another thing that's like frameworks help with that, reduce that
Yeah.
tension of why you disagree. And so if you can show your coworkers who have nothing to do with design and sometimes nothing to do with product, something like, your Orca, like you have your post-it notes and you've drawn out like the connections and the relationships, and you can make it clear, you know, how everything fits together and why you've reached the decision or the thought that you've reached. It's so easy to get people on board. And prior to that, it's not always because there's not a framework to say those things when they're in your head. Like I have that
Yeah.
problem where I think like everything makes sense in my head and then it comes out of my mouth and it's like Like, it's
It
totally
gives you a
different.
language for it, right? And then you can share
Yes.
that language so you can talk to people about it. And I love how you were just in this meeting. Felt really noisy. It felt really ambiguous. And it like was like, okay, let's come back to like, let's just, what are the objects here? What are we actually talking about? What are we calling these things? And that is the perfect way to start. I mean, you've only been at Stripe for a few months. So just like starting with those little things, like where it comes up, it's like use it as needed instead of being like, and now we're going to run an 8-hour OUX workshop. Come on, everybody.
Right?
It just has
It's
to,
such an
you have to like
anchor.
slip it in. And you just, yes, you anchor when it's like, oh, things are getting really fuzzy right now. Let's bring it back. What are these things that we're actually talking about on this page? And to your point of, you can get like, oh, I don't like this, or I don't like where that is, or should that be on the left versus that should be on the right? It's like just distracts from what we're actually like we can have that conversation later.
Hmm.
But let's bring everybody one level deeper to that structural level where like there's like opinions actually don't matter as much. You're getting to the truth of the system. It's like, is it this or is it not this? Right?
Yes.
With Stripe, like are invoices connected to users or are invoices not connected to users? Are the invoices connected to users through transactions? Like whatever the thing is, I'm just riffing on some Stripe objects that I know about, but like
Yeah, of
there's
course.
just a truth to how transactions and invoices and, customers, receipts, like does a invoice only have one receipt or can an invoice have multiple receipts? Like true or
Yeah.
false? There's no opinion here. It's just true or false, right?
It can get so layered when you have it's like I feel like it's a double-edged sword. You want software that does a lot of different things and is like super expansive and it offers all the bells and whistles. And then you also have the challenge of like, but how do you make everybody understand what those things do and how you do them and what the system does? It's a challenge as you see companies continue to scale. Like, for example, I didn't have Facebook for a really long time. I deleted it. And then 2 years ago, I was like obsessed with going through my partner's Facebook marketplace. And so I really wanted to download it again. The first time I saw it, I was like, where's the marketplace? Like, what's all this stuff? Like, I don't get it. Like, yeah, I felt really old. I was like,
Yeah,
I don't, this tool that was like very fun for me in high school, like now that it's been like, 20 years or whatever, I'm all of a sudden like, what's all this stuff? But it's like, I get it, from the business perspective, it's smart to not put all your eggs in one basket because some parts of businesses die and then others continue to scale. But your designer brain will automatically just start drifting when you're working on something, when you move away from objects. Like it's exactly what you said. Like, well, oh, but what about all this other stuff? And I don't know, that looks kind of weird. And like, well, should we have this? And you really need that anchor to pull you back. Otherwise, you're gonna run, and then you don't even realize you've ran, 2 hours in a meeting or in Figma or whatever, and you realize what you just talked about for 2 hours doesn't even matter because it doesn't have anything to do with what the question I ask is, right? It goes back to like, well, who cares? Do they care about that? I don't think so right now. Like, all right, let's start over. Let's talk again about what are these objects? So
what do people care about? They care about the things and the environment. That's what they're coming for. They're coming for the Facebook marketplace listings. They're coming for the people. They come, and then what can I do to them? What kind of jobs can I get done around those things? That's what people care about. What information can I know about a Facebook marketplace listing? I want to know how far away it is from me. I want to know how much it costs. I want to know that. I want to see the pictures of it. That's what people care about. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's tricky too. Like what I will say is, as somebody that has ADHD, you want to do everything right. And so design is actually a funny path to choose because you know that you can't always do everything right. And you have to test and you have to learn from the wrongs to do better. So there's a lot of self-growth within the career space as well. But what I will say is frameworks like ORCA and using OOUX, they do help anchor you in a space that can feel very scary and like you will be rejected and that when you're rejected, that means you're wrong and you're not good enough and all the things that you can do when you spiral. Because to me, it's just like, it's literal. It's just stating the facts. Like the sky is blue. Yeah, it's blue. Sometimes it's gray, but it's blue right now. And like, we know that. And that's that,
We don't know if an invoice has one receipt that it's connected to, or it could have multiple receipts. We don't know. Well, let's go ask our users. What do they think?
Right. Yeah.
What
and if the sky is gray tomorrow, we'll check the weather.
An invoice, maybe like people pay an invoice in multiple payments, like then they need multiple receipts for it. Do we want to design for that? Is that feature in? Is it out? Is
Yeah.
it, then how are we going to prioritize it? So, okay, one last question for you before we wrap up here. So for the folks listening who maybe have been dancing around the OUX masterclass for a while, maybe they are some flavor of neurodivergent, or like I like to say, just a highly intelligent person who thinks in systems, which it's its own form of neurodiversity. And they're like, oh, like, should I do it? Should I not do it? It's kind of a big investment. What would you say to those people?
I would say every designer has a toolkit, and I've actually started calling mine a shed because I have many toolkits and lots of tools. And you become a better designer, not only by acquiring the right tools, but knowing when to use them and how to use them. So, yes, absolutely. I would say dive into OOUX, absorb what matters and what's relevant and how you can use it. And a lot of people don't look at a course and say like, well, how am I going to use that in my everyday job? Because it's really hard to do that and I probably won't be able to. Sure. Like maybe you won't be able to do every exercise or workshop or whatever you learn, but the important piece is to master something and to understand it, that you know where and when to apply it. So you can do what I just said, which is like, I sat down with my coworker and was like, what are the objects and what are the relationships? Like you just start really simple too. You won't be able to do that if you don't know how it works. And I think that in that moment, that was the exact tool that I needed from my shed, which has lots of other tools, right? Like the double diamond method and the da-da-da. But the point is like, if you want to master the art of design, like you got to learn the ins and outs and know how to apply stuff. And that's what's going to make you excel from senior to staff, from staff to whatever. Like, so I would say put on some tunes and open those courses and just get started and take breaks too. Like it, and cause you talk about that in the course, by the way, in the beginning, you're like, it's hard and it's a lot of work, and it is.
Yeah.
I'll say one last thing. I think online courses are so hard for people to do because they do them wanting them to be simple, but they want to like extract all the really nice knowledge from it. And then they're a little bit burdened when it's like actually some work. But I don't think any valuable course is going to be easy, period.
Right. You gotta hit pause when I myself and the other instructors say, hit pause and do the exercise. Like actually hit pause and do the exercise. And it's not a course to listen to on 2x speed while you're folding your laundry. It's not that kind of course. No.
Because you ask yourself, like, sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna reiterate what you said, that like you have your shed and there's lots of tools in the shed. And one thing I feel like I didn't say enough at the beginning, and like I've just started saying the last couple of years, is like OOUX is not here to replace your entire process. It is this, I even talk about it, it's like this like glue between the two diamonds. Like if you think about the double diamond, it's like this third diamond in the middle, and it's a whole suite of tools inside of the ORCA process that you're going to be able to, like, when you're in the trenches, you're going to be able to pull this one out and like say, oh man, I can see that's a junction object there, or like this object here needs to be 3 objects, or man, the functionality is all over the place. Let's do a CTA matrix. Like you'll be able to pull those out in whatever order you need to, but this is not like, just forget everything you've learned and let me like completely brainwash you into this brand new process that everything else you've learned is irrelevant. Like this is additive. Like add this to your process. And I do believe that like once you add this to your process, it does make the other tools in your shed even stronger. So I think it just amplifies. But what were you going to say?
No, I mean, that was so perfect. I've completely was not focused anymore on what I was going to say. I'm just listening straight up to what you were saying. But I'll respond to that and say, it's like a map. And I hate, like, when I saw those corny quotes on my, grandparents' pillows and walls and stuff growing up, I'm like, go brother, like live, laugh, love. You see, you're like, oh God. And then you get older and you're like, all those quotes are so true and so popular because they're true, that like life is a journey, not a destination, right? Well, so is your career. Like OOUX is just like a tool within the map that you're like, as you navigate to wherever it is you're going, and you can use it if you want. It's, you can ride your bike, or you can drive a car, or you can take a train, or you can do this other thing. And I think there's something really special about diversity in the techniques that you can apply, because if you're like me, when opinions get really loud, I get philosophical, and I know that annoys the hell out of lots of people, because I'll be like, well, why does it matter? And what's the meaning of this? And sometimes like that's a really awesome skill, but sometimes it's so not necessary in the process. And that's the thing, is if I believed every process applied to every project, I would not be at Stripe. I would not be a good designer, because I would be stretching out things that only need a couple days, or I would be doing not enough for a project that takes 3 months. So yeah, fully agree with what you were saying there, with just like it's a tool that assists, and that's that.
And then, I mean, coming to like asking the questions, and this is like something that I get a lot of like people that are like, oh my gosh, I'm such an overthinker. And this helps me channel that overthinking. So the idea like, oh, you want to ask, like, you're a curious, intelligent person. And you're like, but why is the whyness of this thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get philosophical about it. And sometimes you got to rein it in. You got to rein it in. And so for that, you know, really curious mind that is kind of sometimes has a lantern consciousness of like all the cool things everywhere, this is a process that can help you zoom it in and ask questions that are super freaking relevant to the business and to the tech and to the, you know, to create awesome products. So
yeah. And find safety and truth too. Find safety in what you've identified that you know to be true in the product. And if opinions come in that disagree with you, one, you know how to respond back to those without getting emotional, right? Let's talk about like regulating without getting emotional. And you also maybe won't take it so personally where you're like, you know what? Yeah, like now that I'm looking at it from this perspective of like a thing, right? An object. Yeah, it doesn't bother me so much when maybe there's something I missed or there's a different object. So it's that too. It's like, like really lean on that as an anchor when the voices in the room get loud, because as a designer, the voices only get louder and there's only more that come in the room the more you move through your career.
So true. So true. And move up your career for sure. Meghan, this is awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and for all of your wisdom and your vulnerability. I absolutely loved talking to you. We're going to link your talks down below. You sent me the ones, so send me any other ones that you want me to link.
Sure.
And is there anywhere else you want to send people to? How can people find you if they want to find you?
Sure. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. My Instagram is mostly just like memes and shit posting. So if you want a professional connection, I highly recommend LinkedIn. I definitely reply to messages. And yeah, I write on Medium. So I'll link my Medium page, but I'm anywhere and everywhere. So feel free to reach out via LinkedIn.
Awesome. All right. We will put the links in the show notes. So reach out to Meghan if you want to talk more about OOUX and neurodivergence. And thank you again for being on. It was a beautiful
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Happy OUXing. Thank you so much for listening to the UX Level Up podcast. If you want to connect with me, Sophia, please